Hello, pen friends. Welcome to another episode of Currently Inked. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. There's a lot of questions in the queue to cover, so I'm going to try to get through a few of them pretty quickly in this episode and then get a bunch recorded, so we'll have some of these coming out a little bit more regularly during the hiatus. I like doing these. They're much easier than doing the full-blown reviews. So, to start off with, let's talk about the mailbag. So in this episode, I'll show you a little bit about this ink. This is the Pelikan Edelstein Smoky Quartz. It is the 2017 special edition ink that Pelikan put out. There is a Smoky Quartz M200 that is also, I believe it's out now. If not, it'll be out very shortly. It's an interesting brown ink. Some people really like it. Others maybe not. The huge favorite of it. It's not one of the more popular inks that have come out. I actually really like it, but then again, I like brown inks quite a bit. And this was given to me by Goulet Pens for giveaway, so I'll have a little bit more about how to win this toward the end of the episode. So getting back to that in a little bit, let me show you what that ink looks like. So this is my new color ring that I got from Van Ness Pens. This is the ink sampling ring that Anna Reinert and her husband make, and of well-appointed desk fame, if you are familiar with her website. If you're not, you should be. But it's a really interesting brown ink. Now, I made this by dipping the ink in the bottle, so when it's wet, it's pretty dark. You can see some shading here on the backside where it wasn't quite as wet. It dried out a little bit. So it does have some shading. There's not a lot of sheen to it. A little tiny bit of sheen right here. But for the most part, maybe not one of the more vibrant browns out there, but it does have some interest. I actually kind of like it quite a bit. So it is kind of on the chocolatey side with hints of gray underneath. It doesn't have a lot of the green or yellowy tint. Maybe a little bit of the yellowy tint back here, but a very interesting ink. I like it quite a bit. So that arrived just recently. That's one of the new things in my queue. So one of the other things you may or may not notice is that the shelves behind me have been reorganized. I am in the process of whittling down my ink collection significantly. So almost all of the actual bottles that you see on the shelves behind me aren't full of ink. They're just full of water with a little bit of ink in them. Most of the ones that have ink in them are inside boxes to keep them from fading. Because I had a bunch of empty bottles lying around that I'm going to use for decoration and to kind of, I think it looks kind of interesting. But anyway, so I'm in the process of getting rid of a bunch of my ink. I'm selling some of it. I'm going to be giving some of it away, sending it off to some new folks to do ink reviews. Which brings me to the next new thing. Coming up over this summer, I'm going to start introducing some ink reviewers to the Pen Habit blog. So they'll be doing written reviews and photos on the blog of a bunch of inks. I just don't love doing ink reviews myself. I know there are a lot of people out there who like them, who want to see them. I just don't really enjoy doing them all that much. So I figured this was a really good opportunity to let people see some of the ink reviews that are out there and not have to do it all myself, because there's a lot of inks and it's getting harder and harder to stay on top of it. All right, so let's dive into a few questions. And as I mentioned, it's been a couple months since I've done one of these, so the questions have piled up. This first question comes from Olivia in Portland, who says, I have a couple of fountain pens I no longer want. They've been used, but they're clean with no defects and no original packaging. They're not super expensive pens, Pilot Metropolitan and Noodler's Flex, but would be good starter pens for someone interested in taking up the hobby. Do you know of a place to go sell them, not eBay, or give them away? I enjoy your videos. Thanks for sharing your love of fountain pens. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Olivia. Selling really inexpensive pens online can be tricky for a couple of reasons. Most of the people who frequent the online forums already have most of these starter pens, or they're not really interested in them any longer. And the expectation generally is when you sell a used pen, you're going to take a hit on what you spent originally. So you're probably not going to get your money back. And then when you factor in the cost of shipping, in many cases, a person could get a brand new pen for about the same price as a reduced cost plus shipping. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You might have some difficulty selling them. That's not to say you couldn't try. So a couple spots you might want to try are the FP Geeks forum. There is a, I forget, on Reddit, there's a subreddit for pen, I think it's called the Pen Swap subreddit. I apologize. I'll try to put a link down in the description below. Also, the Pen Addict, penaddict.com, has a Slack channel. You have to request access to the Slack, but once you do, you can go in, and they've got a sell and trade channel as well. If you're going to try to sell or trade your pens, though, the general rule of thumb I give is don't just walk into this new community that you've never been in before and start listing stuff for sale. People aren't going to necessarily trust you. They don't know who you are. They don't have any sort of relationship with you. So generally speaking, if you want to sell through one of these sorts of venues, my recommendation is go in, write some posts, get involved in the community, let people get to know who you are and that you're a trustworthy person, and then you can start listing pens for sale. Now, with some of these lower end pens, one of the things that I really highly recommend, if you can afford it, is to use these as gift pens to get people started in the hobby. So I've got a bunch of Pilot Metropolitans. I keep one at my desk at work, and when someone expresses interest in a fountain pen, I just hand them that. I keep a cartridge in it and just hand it to them. Pierce the cartridge and hand it to them and say, "Have fun with that." In fact, that happened to me just recently in a training I was in, a 2-day training. The guy across from me didn't bring a pen with him, and so I just gave him a Pilot Metropolitan. He spent the day taking notes with it. He's like, "This is awesome. I may be reaching out to you. I'd like to get a really nice pen. I'd like to spend about $100. And I kind of laughed in my head and said, "Well, $100 is a nice pen, but if you're talking really nice," and I didn't scare him off, but so that's kind of what I would recommend. I know at the DC show this year, they're doing this really cool thing called the Pay It Forward table. So if you've got stuff that you don't necessarily want to sell, but you want to give it to people who've brought their spouses or kids who are just kind of getting started in the hobby, you can leave that stuff at the table for people to pick up and pass along. So that's another really cool option, is if you could do some sort of gift or giveaway. So hopefully that helps you find a way to rehome some of your pens. I know the pain. I've got several pens like that in my collection right now, so I understand how it can go sometimes. This next question comes from Kevin in Cleveland, Ohio, who says, "I'm looking for a notebook for work. I'm a programmer. I want a nice looking notebook in a grid or dot format, and I'm not sure if the Rhodia Web notebook is nice, but I've been looking at the Leuchtturm 1917, but I've heard the quality of the paper is much less. Any tips?" So I think the Leuchtturm is a really good option for you. I don't find the paper quality of the Leuchtturm to be bad. It's not quite as good as Rhodia, but the difference isn't huge. And so long as you're not using huge stub nibs or really wet flexi nibs or that sort of thing, I think you'll be okay. All my fine, medium, and even most of my broad nibs did just fine on Leuchtturm paper. Rhodia Web notebooks are really good notebooks. I have used them as a journal in the past. Nanami, the Nanami paper, Nanami paper, has notebooks made of Tomoe River paper. Goulet pens have Tomoe River notebooks, although I've never tried any of Goulet's notebooks, so I can't speak as to the quality. I'm sure it's good. They generally care pretty heavily about quality on their notebooks, or on any of their products, really. Another one you might want to consider that I don't think a lot of people think about is Franklin Christoph. So Franklin Christoph's notebooks are really good. I like them a lot. They're really well made. They've got cool design on them. They look fantastic, and they have an interesting paper. It's a sugarcane-based paper, so it's a little bit more absorbent and dries faster than you'd get on something like a Rhodia or a Leuchtturm, and really handles fountain pen ink nicely. It also has a little bit more texture. So if you like something that feels a little more toothy, something that has a little bit more, friction to it, the Franklin Christoph notebooks are some you might really want to consider. They're really good. The other one that I really like, that I don't think gets anywhere near enough attention, is from a company called Red and Black, or Red Black. I think it's an apostrophe. These are pretty inexpensive. You can find them at your regular office supply stores. The Staples here carries them. I have used the hardcover notebooks and really like them. The paper quality is really good, and they're really inexpensive. They're only about $5, $6, $7 as opposed to the $20 for the Rhodia or the Leuchtturm or that sort of thing. So hopefully that'll give you some options to play around with. One of the things I haven't had a chance to do a lot lately is actually do what this series is called, which is show you my currently inked. The last couple of months have been really harried for me. A lot of stuff's been going on in my life. I've been struggling just to get out the rest of the reviews that I had to for the season, get the top 5, top 10 out. So now that season 4 is out of the way, I kind of have a chance to relax a little bit and go back into just using my pens again, which is something I've been missing. So I did a huge clean out. I had about 30 pens that were inked. Some of them had been inked for 3 or 4 months, and so they were just a beast to clean out. And I've only inked up maybe 5 or 6. So I'm going to be taking it pretty easy on these currently inked over the summer. I've got 2 or 3 pens that I'm in the middle of processing the review on, and a couple of pens I just like having around because I like writing with them. I haven't had a chance to use a lot of those lately. So one of the pens I am working on right now is, sorry, I had to take a quick look here. It is this pen. This is a Carolina pen company, also known as a Jonathan Brooks pen. This is one of his urushi pens. Now, Jonathan in the last couple of years has really taken up the mantle as one of the new American people to watch in the urushi techniques. He's been doing a lot of learning, using the real stuff, kind of learning how to do urushi. And urushi lacquer is hard to do, and it's hard to do well, and he seems to be doing a really good job. So I first found this at the, let's see, what was it? The DC show in 2016. It's ebonite and red on red lacquer. So it's a lighter red lacquer with a darker red overtone and then polished to kind of shine through. Comes with a lovely 14 karat gold nib, which is nice and smooth, very comfortable in the hand. I really like this pen a lot, and I haven't had a chance to use it very much. So this is one of the ones I'll be reviewing in the upcoming season. And Jonathan of Carolina Pen Company does a lot of custom pens. He's been doing a lot of urushi work, even going so far as doing urushi work on pens that other custom pen makers have made. So I'm excited to see where things go as his techniques as an artist really continue to grow and evolve and improve. And I mean, he's already doing beautiful work, but some of the stuff I've seen coming out of his workshop lately have been really, really impressive. I currently have that inked with Robert Oster Mediterranean. So let me show you what that looks like. So Robert Oster Mediterranean, this is the ink here. It is a lovely turquoisey color. It's got a little bit of shading here. This swatch isn't, I don't think, the most accurate. That's what it looks like, the word Robert. I feel like this is a little bit lighter. A lot of his inks have some pretty heavy sheen. I don't find this to have a huge sheen, but it does have just a really, really nice color to it. You can see it here in my currently inked. Just a really nice color to it. I like it quite a bit. So that is one of my currently inked. I'm real happy with it. I've just about written it dry, so that's going to get cleaned out pretty soon, and then put away for a little bit until I'm ready to start working on that review. All right, let's go to another question. So this next question comes from Joe Schaefer in Edmonton in Canada. And he said, would you discuss online pen shopping sites in general where the best bargains are, online or elsewhere, and your experience with online shopping for pens? So I will and I won't. I'll be real honest. I do have a couple of, actually almost all of the sponsors of the Pen Habit are online retailers. So I am very biased in this respect. So I'll be as straightforward as I can, but I do want to call out that particular bias. So I do the great majority of my shopping for pens online. I have to. I don't have local pen shops anymore. I used to have a really good local pen shop, went out of business, and most of the local shops now have pretty small selections of pens and limited brands. So they've got the Parkers, the Watermans, maybe the Schaefers, but often not that, Crosses. They've got, 4 or 5 brands, and then that's kind of where it ends. So if I want something other than those very well-known kind of legacy brands, I'm stuck locally. I also buy a lot at pen shows. So where can you go to get the best bargains? This is tricky because it's all over the place. And it depends on the distributor, it depends on the retailer's policies, so you kind of have to get to know the landscape. Some retailers will do free shipping if you hit a certain threshold with your order. Others don't do free shipping at all. Some retailers do a discount code and free shipping or not free shipping. Some retailers decide to take a bigger cut, and instead of, basically there's a retail price that's set by most distributors and then a wholesale price. And sometimes they require you to sell it at the retail price. Sometimes they let you take a discount. Sometimes they don't. It just all kind of depends. It depends on the brand. It depends on the country you're in. You're in Canada, so that's a whole different scenario than it is for me here in the United States. What I will say is, for the most part, if you are looking in country, you're going to find about the same prices in all of the online retail locations. There might be small differences, but for the most part, you're not going to see huge differences. So I see this a lot with Japanese pens in particular. If you buy them gray market, you can get a really good price. Now, for those who don't know, gray market pens are pens where you buy it from a country outside of your country, not from an authorized retailer in your region, and they ship it directly to you without having to pay the tariffs or any of the sort of middlemen. A Platinum is a really good example of this. You can go on eBay and find a Platinum 3776 for about half the price that you can get it here in the United States. Now, with that, you run some risks. I've talked about this before, but basically because you're buying at gray market, you're not getting the warranty on the pen. You're not necessarily going to be getting what you purchase. I mean, you can sometimes use the eBay or PayPal risk protections that are in place and fraud protections that are in place, but it doesn't always work. You might not get the converter, for instance. A lot of the things that I buy, if I've bought a Platinum from Japan, it doesn't come with a converter. If I buy it here in the US, it does. Now, when the distributor brings those into the US, they set the US prices. And so if I want to buy it from an authorized retailer, I have to buy it at a pretty significant markup to what I would pay if I were buying it in Japan. I think, and there's been lots written about this and lots talked about it. This is a huge question, and there's really no way to know for sure, but a couple of points that I will give you. Look for retailers that offer either coupon codes or regularly discounted prices or free shipping. Make sure you incorporate that into the costs that you're looking at. Don't hesitate to look outside your country if cost is a big deal for you, particularly if your country has a good exchange rate against, say, the euro or the pound, that sort of thing. And then get to know who your retailers are. I have a few retailers that I go to first pretty much every time because either I have a personal relationship with them or I've been really happy with their service in the past, or, they're sponsors of mine, so I want to show my support as well. And that's another thing. If you've got a blog or a YouTube channel that you follow and they have some sponsors, show a little love by buying from them. It may not be the absolute 100% cheapest, but you are proving to them that their sponsorship of the content that we create is valuable, and that helps us a lot. So again, that's a big question, but there you go. All right, well, I think I'm going to limit it to 3 questions for the next several episodes, keep these a little bit shorter, and make some more of them a little more frequently. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Currently Inked. We'll see you here soon for another one. Bye.